Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. After a crazy couple of weeks, we're going to have this video to be a change of pace, and it's going to be short and sweet and to the point. And we're going to start by covering situation around the Kharkiv direction on the front lines where Russians are trapped. As to our knowledge so far, this now has been the 6 days as Russians have been trapped in the aggregate factory in Vovchansk northern side. What happened is Russians tried to break through about a week ago. They tried to move in. Some of their smaller groups in batches were able to reach aggregate factory, and what they wanted to do is essentially cross the river and destabilize some of the Ukrainian positions on the other side. The unfortunate problems that they hit by doing this is Ukrainians counterattacking and using their tactics that we discussed a couple of videos ago of undercutting their logistics and supplies to this area. So since then, Russians have been trapped on this aggregate factory in north of Vovchansk. Now, some news sources are claiming that it's up to 400 Russians on this factory. I can tell you right away, it's a lot of bullshit. There is no 400 Russians there. The actual number varies from my sources anywhere from 50 to about 100 Russians. So if you see above that, I am quite confident that people are overestimating, and even talking something about 400, that's just fantasy numbers, I'm sorry to say. However, the situation is still quite nice and interesting. Some of the Russians have been surrendering there from in batches of 1, 2 to 5, I believe. But there's still a noticeable number of them being stuck on this factory floors. The supplies that they're being delivered to them right now are being delivered to them via drones. So FPV drones carrying food supplies and ammunitions are coming in there. But the supply of it is relatively small. Beyond that, we thought of what's going to happen, whether or not Ukrainians will be able to hold this position, or Russians will try to break through this and connect to their forces in this factory. Russians have made at least 3 attempts to cross and connect to the factory, but they were all unsuccessful. Ukrainians were able to stop them. Moreover, it has been reported that Ukrainians have actually counterattacked and were able to capture additional couple of streets in the area of Vovchansk. So all in all, it's a very interesting situation. I am quite certain that Russians there will surrender at some point, and so far nothing indicates that Russians can escape that. Now, we always need to understand that Russians still have certain reserves, and we're going to talk about it just a bit later, to maybe try to connect and rescue these guys, and they can plan some kind of operations. But so far, it seems that Ukrainians are having quite a good time. And besides that, Ukrainians have also counterattacked towards Hlubokie. If before they reached only the outskirts of the settlement, right now there are video confirmations of Ukrainians already fighting inside of the village. So Ukrainians are continuously pushing Russians out of Hlubokie, which basically would negate a lot of what Russians have achieved here, because Hlubokie was a major stepping stone for Russians to go towards Liptsi and to attack towards deeper rears in the Kharkiv direction. Losing Hlubokie for Russian means that they will have little to no foothold in the area, and everything else is just like villages in super gray area. Hlubokie is kind of the only relatively relevant settlement that they would want to hold on to. Not at this point anymore. Beyond that, Russians have been known to slow down. Additionally, I've talked about that the Russians were trying to achieve something and use the forces that they had to do something on the northern area. They have been mostly slowed down. The number of fighting incidents in the area has been dropped significantly. So northern area now coming more to a balanced standstill. The same is also happening on the area of Terny, in this area where before I was reporting and explaining you the problems that Russians had on Terny. This has also been subsequently broken down. Russians have put some effort to try to fight and move along this area to try to undercut towards Seversk direction. The unfortunate problem for Russians is that Ukrainians have been using some of their supplied equipment and weapons and have been striking Russians, and they were able to retake a part of the forest. And hopefully Ukrainians will be able to also put some effort towards the area of Bilohorivka, and potentially what I'm hearing, the efforts are there. And that will mean basically that all of this movement in the south is literally for nothing. It would be a nice preparation movement if Russians would able to go forward, maybe go in this area and kind of undercut the area over here. That would be a great move, but it's a stretch. It's a very, very, very long stretch. Beyond that, the Chasiv Yar offensive that Russia has been going towards have been also slowed down. Russians really were hoping, and they put a lot of effort to achieve two major things. The first one was that they really wanted to reach this river, the Channel River. Well, it's not called the Channel River, but like the channel that was located over here, but they were unable to. They control only about half of the district that is located right next to that channel. So they are not even close to that channel, haven't even started getting there. And there are major fights here, but it's locally major fights. So intense, but without any major advances or breakthroughs. So Russia can still maybe hope to close out this channel and maybe reach this area, but they have been slowed down significantly. And second thing, what Russians really wanted to do is they wanted to get around Chasiv Yar, to get to the southern area and maybe cross the channel on the south and attack the Chasiv Yar from the south. The issue with that was twofold. One was the last pieces of Ukrainian resistance around the village of Ivanivske and Klishivka Heights, with the Klishivka village Klishivka village on the south and Klishivka Heights right above it on the north. So Russians were able to put enough effort to clear out this objective around Ivanivske, which allowed them to move forward. But the big positions, the most important positions here around the northern Klishivka, the hills above Klishivka at the north and the village at the south, that was problematic. Russians really tried to attack towards the hills, but were extremely unsuccessful. They were able to attack towards the village of Klishivka, and they were able to establish their foothold. However, in the latest couple of days, Ukrainians counterattacked in Klishivka and was able to negate any gains Russia had in this area. The inability of Russia to capture Klishivka in this fortification area basically negates for them, due to the geography of the positions here, it negates for Russian ability to advance on the southern axis. So despite Russians capturing Ivanivske finally, they are not getting their way. And the same happening in the north, but to a more intense extent. They were really trying to capture the village of Kalinivka, where they tried to get through, and I covered it a couple of videos ago. Then Ukrainians actually set up a trap, counterattacked, and pushed the Russians all of the way back. Russians are still trying to do that. They're still sending their troops, but again, the intensity dropped. The only area where, first and foremost, this is the main push of Russians. If we're talking about it, the Kharkiv offensive was the distraction that Russians were really hoping for, then their main offensive of Russians that is still developing is happening here on the Pokrovsk direction, around the Avdiivka direction for Ukrainians. Russians are continuing advancing here towards the village of Novoalexandrivka, Umanivske, most likely Novoselivka Persha would be also. Sokil, I'm surprised that Sokil still holds, but I believe it is because Sokil was defended by Ukrainians, and it's quite a nice position. And because Russians were successful in Umanske and Novopokrovske, I believe that they saw the opportunity to potentially say, okay, let's put our efforts here, attack towards Novoselivka Persha, and then we kind of were going to be able to flank Sokil and therefore collapse the southern flank without going towards Sokil directly, which is located right over here. This would be kind of the main point of Russians, because they want to reinforce their left flank of this major salient. So if we zoom out And we see like Russians are trying to push here. That's their main wedge. So what they want to do as they move the wedge and salient forward, they want to reinforce the sides of the edge. And to reinforce the sides, they need to capture the village of Sokil that is located here. And they try to do it right from the get-go in front. It wasn't successful, but they were able to move a little bit on the flanks and essentially try to reestablish themselves at the same way. Beyond that, there is reports on the north. They're fighting for the village of Kalinova. It is expected the village of Kalinova most likely is going to fall, but they are not there yet. There are combats, and so far there has not been there has been a slowdown in Russian tempo, but we are not still seeing that the tempo is slowing down to the Russians not really advancing. The good news is that the General Syrskyi has recently reported that if before he was focusing his attention very, very closely towards the northern area, right now he's actually working very closely on the southern direction, this is the eastern direction, in the south from Kharkiv, and trying to see how they can use their resources to stop Russians on this axis of attack. All in all, to sum it up, what happened is that Russians are stupid. Well, I don't think I need to explain this. What I didn't tell you guys a couple of weeks ago, I always kind of forgot, is that a couple of weeks ago when Russians attacked to Kharkiv direction, it was clear that their attack didn't succeed. Russians were very low on resources. On all of their major front lines, like this half moon over here, Russians had reserves of about 30 to about 50,000 troops, which is, it's significant, but it's not like a lot. So by the military science, as the analysts were saying, Russians should have taken the operational pause, but they didn't. Instead of operational pause, Russians continued throwing in units towards the Kharkiv direction. These units did not achieve more efforts, but they were able to reestablish and start fortifying the positions there. That was one thing. Beyond that, they reinforced certain other areas in the front line, and most importantly, the main axis of the attack with these forces. So right now, if before it was about 30 to 50,000, right now it's somewhere from 20 to 30,000 troops that are Russia has on reserve. Everything else is now engaged. This is like bare bones minimum. Like this is lower than low that Russia is having. Russia is running on fumes. They are literally living on a knife edge. They have no reserves. So if Ukraine would have some kind of a secret army ready to strike right now, most likely Russia would not be able to stop them. But they pretty much are aware that Ukraine doesn't have the resources. That's why they are free to try to do whatever they want. But the point still stands. As stupid as they are, as dedicated they are to kill every single Russian on their side, but it is clear that even them are understanding that they don't have the resources. So we are precisely on time. I said to you that that by the end of June, we will see Russia grind down to a halt, and it's exactly what's happening. Now, obviously, we still have the last direction, which is the direction of Pokrovsk, the Avdiivka direction, where Russians are still advancing. But overall, the situation is coming to a stop. Ukrainians are finally receiving the weapons that they need. The biggest report that was recently was that not only the artillery brigades are now receiving artillery ammunition, but also the regular brigades are receiving now artillery ammunition that was not there for a while. So more field artillery that is available for even tactical missions is going to be available for Ukrainians. Situation is evening out. Russians are slowing down. All good. We are getting the situation from what I described like a week ago being pretty bad to just pretty saying that now it's worrying, really, really worrying. But it's improving. Ukrainians have been successful around the area of Klishivka. This is what I told you in their counterattacks around the Bakhmut area, around Klishivka, and they were able to capture fully operational Russian Coup tank, which is a great video. You can watch it on the Discord channel. It's pretty fun, especially this whole thing. The Summit for Peace of Ukraine has finished up. There is a lot of speculation about this, but I want to underscore that the main thing about this peace summit is that it happened. It started creating the vision of what is the just peace in Ukrainian vision, and it starts getting people on board to start thinking about it. It takes the diplomatic narrative that was strongly in the Russian hands due to their propaganda, and now it's being a proper diplomatic fighting point for the side of Ukraine. People expect a lot of things from this summit. I do not expect a lot of things. The most important thing is the legitimacy. Over 90 countries attended the event, and it's great, and that's exactly what it needed to do. Just to show that there is some kind of legitimacy to Ukrainian claim. The actual facts on the table, to be honest, for this peace summit doesn't really matter, because right now there is no leverage over Russia. So let's not kid ourselves that there is some kind of diplomatic negotiations coming. Additionally, as I was explaining before, that Ukrainians are now cleaning up their act. For example, the commander of the 125th Brigade, which allowed the breakthrough around Kharkiv, has resigned right now. I'm pretty sure it happened either by the pressure or certain procedure. So it's great to see that Ukrainians are working towards clearing out and getting that level of responsibility out there, and I'm really happy to see that the changes are coming into Ukrainian forces as well. Rheinmetall has produced a very interesting tank concept. It's not a tank. They installed the anti-air Sky Ranger turret on the not T-62, it was the Leopard 1 tank chassis. So Germany has old Leopard tanks, which are pretty old, and they have a lot of these chassis. So they just put a new anti-air turret that provides a lot of anti-air coverage on top of that chassis and created a really good firing and mobile platform. Super good development, and it will come to Ukraine as well. It's going to speed up the production and output of these vehicles. That's really good news. Ukraine has received M113s from Lithuania for demining. Thank you so much to Lithuania, and this is great news. And finally, Zelensky is stating that the F-16s are about to appear in Ukraine. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. We are continuing our campaign together with the Women Veteran Movement to get the medevac track for the armed forces of Ukraine. The link to campaign is in description. Please participate in campaign as much as you can. To participate, they have a little bit of troubles with processing because it's a Ukrainian campaign that didn't really have any kind of account that works with European Union. So we did what we could. We were able to make PayPal work with them. But if you just have a card, you can still do it. It's just a little bit tricky. So what you just need to do, once you go into the link, open here, select your amount or input it, click next. Then you click credit card, debit card. Then you input your first name, last name, and email. You click next. Then after that, there's going to be two buttons here. There's going to be the default one, the card, that's going to ask for your credit card details. Don't put the details here. Instead, go for the PayPal button and press the PayPal button. Once you press PayPal button, it will says, oh, donate towards PayPal. It will send you over to PayPal. I'm sorry, mine is in Danish. But you will have two buttons in PayPal. You will be able to donate with PayPal if you have PayPal, or it will allow you to make a contribution with a payment card. So you will essentially be able to do a payment with a card just using a PayPal. In any case, thank you so much for watching this. Please support the armed forces of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini, guys. I love you all, and I'll see you next time.